Good morning. So, this presentation will be over my interview that I conducted, and I interviewed Mrs. Marvin. She is a middle school teacher, primarily teaches 6th and 8th grade. She teaches Family and Consumer Sciences at Way Ridge Middle School here in West Lafayette, Indiana. So, some main takeaways that I took away from my interview was that being a teacher, your location in the building plays a role on how much communication you have with certain people you work with. There could be 40 plus people you work with that you may not have contact day to day. So, for example, she gave me that the art teacher, which is right next to her classroom, she talked with the art teacher and had a better relationship and communication style with her versus the gym teacher who was in a different location and that they hardly saw each other. So that was one of the things I had to keep in consideration, that your location really plays a part in your communication styles with other people. Another main takeaway I took from the interview was having patience and being understanding goes a long way. You are working with young adults who could be first learning this topic you're trying to teach them, so you have to be patient in your leadership and communication styles so that you can really show them the empathy that they need and give them the support they need to grow and develop and know that it's okay to make mistakes. Another aspect of being a teacher that I learned from the interview was you really have to get to know your students on a personal level. This also relates back to a chapter in the books that we have to read, talking about peeling away the layers. As a teacher, that's such an important role, to peel away the layers, to get to really know how your students think, how they feel, where they work best, how they work best, to really get them the best academic environment they need. And the last main takeaway that I have listed on here is, as a teacher, you are the main point of contact for that child throughout the whole entire day. Sometimes these students may only feel safe when they're at school. So you need to be a role model for these students and have the leadership skills to lead these students, as well as be an emotional support system to encourage the environment to be successful and positive. So I also included just a couple of the interview questions that I had asked Mrs. Marvin, and just some of the summary of her responses that I thought were really valuable to my future. So one of the questions I had asked her was, what are some examples of communication barriers? And she said students often don't listen very well. They may be off task, they had a rough day, and they don't comprehend. And you may find yourself repeating, and that can be a barrier because you are losing time because you're going back to repeat. So this also ties into being understanding and patient because you don't know what the student is going through, so you really just have to be very empathetic to show that you are a support system for them and that it's okay that you don't know. But also you have to set a limit and saying, okay, you need to be focused so we don't have to backtrack and we can move forward with the lesson. Another part of the interview that was really surprising to me was how much of an age difference plays into your communication. You know, as a family consumer sciences educator, you can be either educating middle school students, grades 6th through 8th grade, or high school students, grade 9th through 12th. And there is a big difference between middle school age and high school age. But also there's a big gap between the middle school grades of the age differences. Especially as a time where people are maturing, they're going through new changes. You really have to know how to communicate well with students, because as a mature adult you may have a different style of communication and leadership skills when you're working with people that are the same age as you. So you have to also realize that not every communication style that you think works best for every group of people. Every group of people has different needs, different levels of education, so you really have to understand that age difference plays a role in how you need to adapt your communication and leadership styles. So, another question that I decided to ask was, how do you deal with conflicts in your classroom while you're teaching? And this was Mrs. Marvin's method of disciplinary of conflicts. It was a really great list, so I also included that here as well in the PowerPoints. So she first gives a verbal warning, just, hey, make sure the student knows what they're doing wrong. because sometimes students may not know that they're doing something wrong. Even this could be something that they normally do at home that is acceptable at home, but here in the classroom it may not be acceptable. So then the next step she had was private one-on-one talk with the student in the hallway, get them away from the setting, have them really pay attention to you, and get across your message of, what they're doing wrong in the classroom or how this could be changed. Then next she said take away hall cards. Then if it continues, lunch detention. If it continues, office referral. If it still is continued, then you call home, and then the student will ultimately have to write an apology letter to the people affected by their behavior. So one of the last questions that I had asked her, because it was really pressing on my mind, is how do you resolve conflicts within your classroom while you're still trying to teach? Because it takes a lot of communication skills and reflection to know how to adequately address these situations as well as continue to have an effective class. So she said, just be direct with your communication and provide clarity. Don't leave any gaps for misinformation. So your students know exactly what you expected them. They have a set routine, but they also have that autonomy to have freedom as well within your classroom. The big one, which is something they should always do in any leadership, communication, just be empathetic. You don't know where these students are coming from, how they're brought up, their backgrounds, how their day has been. Just be empathetic because you are, a direct point of contact throughout the day. So you want to make sure that you're in an emotional support system for these students. They're going through a lot of stress. They're having big changes, especially in the middle school age. So you just really want to be there for your students as much as possible. Another thing is try to turn it into a learning and a teaching experience. So, have each person understand in the conflict, yourself and maybe the children or the students, have them learn from this experience. What did they do wrong? What can they do better? What can I do better? Make it into a teaching, learning experience so that each party and that is involved in the conflict gets something out of it ultimately in the end. Lastly, just sit down with the individual and talk to them at a more personal level. This is really important, Get them away from the uncomfortable setting. If they're having a problem where it may be involved with other students, take them away, have a one-on-one, get down to their level, show that you're really empathetic and that you really do care about maybe why is this going on? How can we change it? What can we do better? So that also kind of related to being a leader, because you have to know each member of your group and how they work best, what their strengths, their weaknesses, because you are only as strong as your weakest link. So you want to make sure that you really truly know everybody that you're leading. And that can be hard as an educator because you have so many students throughout the day, but doing these simple little things, pulling them aside, getting the background, can really help you become a great educator.